Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Joshua Orro, the Mustang Prince, and welcome to Mustang Prince Orro Reports. In my last episode, I took a look at Disney's Fantasia, and as I said in my blog, this movie is considered as Walt Disney's magnum opus, a film so different at the time, and yet so groundbreaking. Instead of focusing on the traditional fairy tales like Snow White and Pinocchio, Fantasia is a whole collection of 8 stories set to classical pieces of music, such as Night on Bald Mountain, Dance of the Hours, and The Sorcerer's Apprentice with Mickey Mouse. You know, after this movie, there were plans to make a sequel, but unfortunately, the idea fell. But after 60 years, Walt Disney Animation made a new version of Fantasia, and that is the subject of my blog today. Premiering at the New York City Carnage Hall on December 17, 1999, and released to IMAX on January 1st, 2000, the movie is Fantasia 2000. Now let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. Fantasia 2000 continues and builds upon Walt Disney's original idea with the creation of a new musical program interpreted by a group of distinguished Disney artists and storytellers. And what are my thoughts on this movie? Well, this was outstanding, but unfortunately, I never saw it in theaters, though I wanted to. It's just, there were 2 reasons why I didn't. 1, my parents didn't think I'd be interested in a movie like this back then. And 2, I wasn't used to IMAX experiences at the time. I was only 9 years old back then. Anyway, let's move on to Mustang notes. The movie was produced by Roy E. Disney and Donald W. Ernest. It is the 3rd sequel produced by Walt Disney Animation Studios. The previous films being The 3 Caballeros and The Rescuers Down Under. After numerous unsuccessful attempts to develop a Fantasia sequel, the Walt Disney Company revived the idea shortly after Michael Eisner became Chief Executive Officer in 1984. The commercial success of the 1991 home video release of Fantasia convinced Eisner that there was enough public interest and funds for a sequel, and he assigned Roy E. Disney as executive producer. The music for 6 of the film's 8 segments is performed by the Chicago Symphony Orchestra and conducted by Maestro James Levine. Each new segment was produced by combining traditional animation with CGI imagery. The film was released in 75 IMAX theaters worldwide from January 1st all the way up to April 30th, 2000, making the first animated feature-length film to be released in that format. Now let's talk about Maestro James Levine. James is primarily known as music director of the Metropolitan Opera, a position he held for 40 years. Levine has made numerous recordings as well as television and radio broadcasts with the Met, that is. Levine has also held leadership positions with the Ravinia Festival, the Munich Harmonic, and the Boston Symphony Orchestra. In my opinion, James did a great job conducting the music for this movie. Also, what's amazing is that many of the musicians of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra were playing for the very first time while the movie was being made. Now, instead of having one host like in the first film, this movie has several hosts introducing each segment. First, we have Steve Martin, who used to work at the magic shop at Disneyland before he became a big-named actor and comedian. Also, It's been about a year since I acted as one of his characters on stage. We also have Itzhak Perlman, who was one of the guest stars in the Sesame Street music video, Put Down the Ducky. Quincy Jones, who after this movie got to have a guest appearance in Austin Powers Goldmember. Next we have the spunky Bette Midler, whom I remember from Oliver and Company and Hocus Pocus. James Earl Jones, best known as Darth Vader from Star Wars, and King Mufasa from The Lion King. And I can't wait till next year when he reprises his role in the upcoming live-action remake. Next are the comical magicians Penn and Teller, and the legendary Angela Lansbury, best known from Beauty and the Beast, The Last Unicorn, and Don Bluth's Anastasia. You know, my favorite presenters in this movie are Bette Midler, who tells the audience about a few musical ideas that didn't make it into the movie, and Penn and Teller, who explain that stage magic is a fraud, and they turn a ponytail into a rabbit, which was really funny. And now, let's move on to the segments in the movie. The first segment in the movie is Beethoven's Symphony No. 5. This segment shows abstract patterns and shapes that resemble butterflies in various colorful shades, tints, and hues, which explore a world of light and darkness while being pursued by a swarm of black bats. The world is ultimately conquered by light. In my opinion, this segment is very reminiscent to the Toccata and Fugue segment from the original. Also, this music is considered to be a favorite by many Beethoven fans. Also, my favorite parts of the segment are seeing rays of sun come from the clouds, and I think the little pink butterfly is very brave when trying to escape from the bats. Next we come to Ottorino Respighi's Pines of Rome. This segment shows a family of humpback whales who are able to fly. The story is about a whale calf who is separated from his parents, and he becomes trapped in an iceberg. Eventually, he finds his way out with his mother's help. Afterwards, the family joins a larger pod of whales who fly and frolic through the clouds to emerge into outer space. In my opinion, this segment is so powerful. Also, like Ave Maria from the original, my dad loves this music due to the fact that it came from his home country, Italy. Plus, the animation is very interesting. You see, while the backgrounds are hand-drawn, the whales are CGI. But when we get close-up shots of the whales' faces, they look hand-drawn. Plus, I think the whale calf looks very cute. And the ending part is very powerful and emotional. Next we come to my second favorite segment, Rhapsody in Blue by George Gershwin, performed by pianist Ralph Gierson. Set in 1930s New York City and designed in the style of Al Hirschfeld's known caricatures at the time, the story follows four individuals. Duke, a construction worker who wants to be a drummer. Joe, who wants to find employment. A little girl named Rachel, who wants quality time with her parents. and John, who wants to have fun with his life, though his killjoy of a wife prevents him from doing so. The segment ends with all four getting their wish, though their stories interact with each other without any of them knowing. The animation for this segment was directed by Eric Goldberg, best known for animating the genie in Aladdin, the Pink Panther during the 2006 animated intro, and Maui's tattoos in Moana. In my opinion, this segment is very jazzy, and unlike the other segments in this movie, this one is the most realistic. Also, I think the title of the segment may have been the inspiration for a Heartless in the Kingdom Hearts franchise. Plus, the things I like in this segment are, 1. There's a George Gershwin cameo, and 2. The characters are very relatable and sympathetic, and 3. The setting in New York makes me think of the Broadway musical Annie, and it makes me think back to the time when I visited this bustling city. Next we have Piano Concerto No. 2 by Dmitri Shostakovich, performed by pianist Yefim Brofman. This segment is a short film based on Hans Christian Andersen's wonderful fairy tale, The Steadfast Tin Soldier. It's the story of a broken toy soldier with one leg who falls in love with a toy ballerina and protects her from an evil jack-in-the-box. Unlike the original story, this version has a happy ending. Fun fact, this segment marks the 3rd time Disney adapted a Hans Christian Andersen story into animation. The previous 2 were The Ugly Duckling and The Little Mermaid. To me, this story is very romantic, and I like the CGI animation used for the toys. Plus, I think the music fits perfectly with the story. Next we come to The Carnival of the Animals by Camille Saint-Saëns. This segment asks, what would happen if you gave a yo-yo to a flock of flamingos? During the segment, a flock of flamingos tries to force a slapstick member who enjoys playing with a yo-yo in order to engage in the flock's dull routines. In my opinion, this segment is the funniest in the whole movie, and it feels very reminiscent to the Dance of the Hours from the original. Plus, some folks have told me that the animation in this segment makes them think of I Just Can't Wait to Be King from The Lion King. Also, this is the shortest segment in the movie. Now, since I've already talked about the Sorcerer's Apprentice during my blog of Fantasia, there isn't a lot to talk about here, other than the fact that it's the same story and the same animation. However, the music is not recycled from the original, which means the Fantasia 2000 Orchestra did it instead. And in my opinion, they did a great job, and I can hardly tell the difference. Also, when Mickey goes up to congratulate Leopold Stokowski, he's this time voiced by the late Wayne Allwine, who sadly passed away from diabetes not too long before I graduated high school in 2009. Speaking of which, next we come to my favorite segment in the movie, Pomp and Circumstance by Edward Algar, and starring Mickey's friends Donald Duck and Daisy Duck. In this segment, based on the story of Noah's Ark from the book of Genesis, Donald Duck is Noah's assistant, and Daisy is Donald's wife. Donald is given the task of gathering the animals to the Ark, and he misses, loses, and reunites with Daisy in the process. To me, this is a wonderful version of Noah's Ark. Certainly a lot better than the Noah film that I blogged recently. Also, I like the way the Ark looks in this segment. It's almost like it stays true to several Bible illustrations. What's more, several of the animals featured in this are reminiscent to animals we've seen in other Disney films. Also, I think Donald does a great job helping Noah round up all the animals and getting them onto the Ark. And lastly, the music is the best part about this segment. And nowadays, whenever I listen to this march, it brings back memories from when I graduated from high school and college. And finally, we have our last segment, the Firebird Suite by Igor Stravinsky. In this, a spring sprite is awoken by her companion, an elk, and accidentally wakes the Firebird, a fiery spirit of destruction in a nearby volcano, who destroys the forest and seemingly the sprite. Thankfully, the spring sprite survives, and the elk encourages her to restore the forest to its normal state. To me, this segment is very beautiful, and the animation feels like a painting come to life. Also, ever since I saw this segment, the beginning of the music made me think of Angel of Music from the Phantom of the Opera. Fun fact, the segment was inspired by the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980, and the destruction it caused to an entire valley in which 57 people were killed. Now let's talk about the characters in this segment, starting with the Spring Sprite. In my opinion, the Spring Sprite is very pretty, and she seems like an innocent character. Plus, I really like what she does when bringing life into the forest that she lives in. Also, I think she may have been the inspiration for Te Fiti in Moana. Next we come to the Spring Sprite's companion, the elk. Now, this character is very kind, caring, and loyal. Also, he makes me think of the Great Prince from Bambi. And finally, we come to the Firebird. This creature is a giant eagle made of molten lava, and everything it touches gets destroyed, either by lava flow or fire breath. In my opinion, the Firebird is equally as frightening as Chernabog. But, unlike Chernabog, who's a force of evil, the Firebird is a force of nature, whose purpose is to kill the Spring Sprite for disturbing its hibernation. Also, a lot of folks have told me that when they saw the Firebird awaken, it made them jump out of their seats. Also, due to the amount of destruction it can do, I think it could be the inspiration for the death Pokemon, Yveltal. Also, if Square Enix is watching this blog, I just hope that the Firebird becomes a boss in Kingdom Hearts 3. And now, for my final words. Overall, Fantasia 2000 truly is a great follow-up to Fantasia. The new animated segments used for this movie are wonderful, and I like the different styles of animation used for each segment. Also, James Levine and the Chicago Symphony Orchestra did a great job with the music, and each guest star did amazing with introducing each segment. So, Thank you, Roy Disney, for making this movie possible. I give this movie a full 100%. Well, that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to join me for my next vlog. Mustang Power!